Radar on Leadership is a podcast that's been around a long time. It started off with Thom doing the podcast. Then Thom and Jonathan Howe, also known as The Voice, came along. And then Jonathan took a job with the denominational leadership. Sorry to see him go, but it afforded a good opportunity for son Sam to join me on Rainer on Leadership. And essentially what has happened in that time, Sam was just kind of along saying, yeah, right, and all that. Now he's basically the leader of Rainer on Leadership, and I'm saying, yeah, right, and all that. And Sam is now the leading voice of it. And there are a lot of good things that happen. But let me tell you one of the good things that's been happening at Church Answers. I get kind of pumped about this. We have what may seem like somewhat a benign tool. It's called the Everything Church Resource Directory. And the Everything Church Resource Directory is not a benign tool. It is a really fantastic tool, because if you want to know anything about church resources, where to go and get something, categorize, alphabetize any way you want to, this is the place to get it. You can get it free. We've got some great listings in there. Some of them are sponsors, but we listed everybody we know. Sam, we've gotten 3 or 4 or 5 complaints now from people saying, you didn't list me. Why didn't you list me? And the reality of it is you're probably on page 8 of the Google search. So you need to pay a little money to move yourself up. But in the meantime, if you tell us, we'll add you to the list. But you've got to wait 6 more months now. But I wanted to mention that. It's just really cool that we have that free resource available for our constituency.
One of our best free resources. It's such a great place to find what you need for church life.
Everything Church Resource Directory.
Let's call it Everything Church Resource Directory.
Yep. Hey, speaking of good things, California Baptists. I almost want to break into a 60s song and say, I wish they all could be California Baptist students and make it to the tune of California Girls by the Beach Boys. But I don't know if California Baptists would appreciate that. I don't know if the audience would appreciate it if I sung it. So I'm just going to end it there, but I love California Baptists. Hey, for those of you who are part of the Southern Baptist tribe, they got Pew Research to tell them that fewer than 20% of Southern Baptist pastors have a bachelor's degree. They see this as an opportunity to help pastors to get to that next level of education. And yes, it's online. And yes, it's digital type of education. Yes, it is very high quality. But one of the real rich parts of this is they're offering a class every 8 weeks. So you can go 8 weeks, take something you like, take a break. Maybe if you really want to be ambitious, take 2 in an 8-week period. They got the bachelor degree in Christian ministry. They've got financial aid. They've got other degrees. You can study business in other areas. You can study ministry. So go to the show notes, look at calbaptist.edu in the show notes, go into the link, and you can find out how you can connect to this degree that they designed specifically for the Southern Baptist tribe, many of whom do not have degrees. Okay, we're going to be talking about why worship music may not be clicking. Maybe you wonder this. My guess is you don't stay up at night.
This is different than clicks and stems for those of you who are worship pastors.
Okay.
So a former worship pastor, we won't name his name, not my current worship pastor, but we would do the clicks and the stems. And for some reason, he could never get it right. And the click would come through the main speakers. And so we would be out in the congregation and you'd hear the click, 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 the beat. That's what it is. And he'd have his ears in, and the monitors in his ears. And after the service, I'd be like, hey, we could hear like the click, and it was really kind of annoying. He'd always be like, oh, I was wondering why it wasn't coming through on mine. It's just like, oh my goodness. So anyway, that's not what we're talking about.
Maybe so. So maybe at times you wonder, I doubt you stay up nights thinking and worrying about this. Where does Sam and Thom come up with their content? My guess is you really don't wonder about that. We've mentioned many times that they come through consultations. Many times they come through Church Answers Central. And by the way, if you are not a member of Church Answers in the membership area, check the silver and gold. You can check the platinum. Incredible value. Our best value is the gold. You get know your community, your budget, yourself, what I'm near church, and the newest one, Know Your Beliefs. So, and that just comes with it, and it's several $100s in value at the gold level just for $20 a month, and then the silver level is $9.97 a month, and I could go on and on about that, but we'll put that in the show notes as well. This particular this particular podcast title and theme came from a consultation. And let me give you the background of the consultation. A church, really a good, healthy church, um, was going through worship wars would be an overstatement, but worship difficulties because they had a contemporary service that should have been growing according to the demographics. It wasn't. It was declining. They had a traditional service that was doing very well. A lot of it had to do with solid preaching, good organization, but they just asked the question, why is our contemporary worship so poorly attended? Well, we sent one of the roles that we have in our consultation is we send a secret guest, and the secret guest went there, and he came back in the report and said, how was it? And he said, well, great preaching, really good traditional service. Contemporary worship service stunk. It was terrible. And that was he is the secret shopper or the secret visitor was not a musician. He just knew it was bad. Okay, so one of the services we have at Church Growth, our Church Answers, is we provide worship analysis, very detailed worship analysis, and so we sent one of our worship consultants to listen to the entirety of the worship service. In fact, he did two of them, contemporary. Sam, I shared that with you. It was amazing what he found. Absolutely amazing.
I read the report. Best report I've ever read when it comes to analyzing a worship service.
Yes, yes, and we usually the church is satisfied with the secret guest. Okay, they observed this. This one wanted to know what's going on, and boy, was there's a lot of technical things. The clicks weren't coming through the monitors, but some things were even worse. And if I start going down any further, some people from that church will hear this podcast and will be personally offended. But one of the things is the church service didn't have a clear purpose or vision. What are we doing? Oh, we're having a contemporary service because you're supposed to have a contemporary service because there may be some young people in the community. Well, evangelism and outreach is a good purpose to meet a certain demographic, but they really weren't trying to reach that demographic. They were doing a contemporary service because they're supposed to have a contemporary service. They thought that was needed. And by the time we got there, Sam, the service had been struggling for 9 years. I think about all the opportunities lost.
I see this all the time. It happened at West Bradenton. When I arrived at West Bradenton, we had a contemporary service, we had a traditional service. Except the contemporary service was coffee shop acoustic with a tambourine, which is not typically what you think of a contemporary service being. And the traditional service was Gaither hour, which, I like the Gaithers, and I like Southern gospel, like black gospel music, but it was every week, every song. And we were calling that traditional. So sometimes your labels just get a little off. And I don't even know how I would have labeled what we had. We don't have those anymore. But it was an issue for our church because it was very confusing to guests when they showed up. They're like, wait, I thought this was the traditional service. No, it is. It's a lot of Southern gospel. Yeah, it is. I thought this was contemporary service. It is. But there, I know.
Yes, I've attended both of those services back in those days, Sam. You're blessed now with what you have. You've made it through. One of the benefits of tenure. You've made it through all this.
Yeah, it took a while, and some transitions that were hard, and some that weren't so hard, and some ups and downs. But 9 years in, we're in a much better place. And maybe it shouldn't have taken that long, but hey, I'm not that great of a leader, so it took 9 years.
Wow. Well, I really want to sing a 60s song about my green tambourine. It's a one-hit wonder, but I don't even remember the group that sang it or the person that sang it. But I remember the words so well, and I remember the purpose behind it. It was somebody passed a beggar on the street who was just magical with tambourine, and they decided to give him money. So That's the purpose of the song, but many services don't have purpose. I don't know why I'm doing that. I'm about to get back on track. Another one of the critiques that our worship consultants said, they said they're trying to do too much. They have too many vocalists. They have overpowering instruments. They have people on instruments that can't play the instruments. They have people in the lead vocal who should be backup. They just had one, and then he said on top of all of that, they have technical problems as well because somebody's trying to follow along in the booth and sound booth and ain't working. And he went minute by minute in that, Sam. I mean, it was amazing all the work he did.
I trying to do too much is something that I see in larger churches, even churches that have a lot of people, and some churches have a come all sort of mentality with worship, which is not a bad thing. I mean, getting more people involved and getting more people discipled through worship, I think that's a great posture. But not everyone that plays the trombone needs to be on the stage all at the same time. And I've seen that before. I've been in a church, a big church, where I was like, there are a lot of brass instruments going on up there. For whatever reason, they just had a surplus of brass instrument players. And those are kind of loud instruments. So guess what you felt in the worship service? I mean, you thought Christ was going to return with all those trumpets blaring. So you can rotating people, getting schedules, not having everyone up there all the time. And I understand the temptation because it can be a bit political in the worship ministry, certainly, where I want to be on stage every week. A lot of people want that, desire that, but it's not always the best. So sometimes simpler is better. You wrote a book about that called Simple
Mm-hmm.
Church.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes even big churches can just try to do too much in the worship service.
Oh, exactly. Another thing that he noticed was the service was not encouraging congregational singing. We've had Keith and Kristen Getty on our podcast several times. In fact, Keith will text me every 3 or 4 months and say, "Is it time for me to be on the podcast?" And I don't know what he's talking.
Those are our best episodes.
Oh, Keith is
Particular,
hilarious,
particularly
and
when Keith just riffs. He just goes off, and it's awesome.
yes, or particularly as articulate as Kristen is. I mean, she can get to the essence of it, and I understand
Well, she
everything.
actually makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean, she has to come on the show to make sense. When Keith just goes, it may not make sense, but it's hilarious.
oh yeah, and but let me get back on topic again. They are, among other things, the premier advocates of congregational singing. You'll ask Keith, what's the biggest void in church worship and music life? He'll say, what's congregational singing? So what? What's congregational singing? And then Kristen will say, lack of congregational singing. I said, thank you, Kristen, for the interpretation from our Irish buddy there. Uh, but he's right. And that's not necessarily aligned with contemporary trend or traditional or the weirdly talked about blended that I have never understood. But when the people can't sing, it hinders one of the acts of worship.
Yeah, so contemporary worship experiences can be too loud,
Mm-hmm.
where you can't hear. And traditional worship experiences can be too choir focused, where it's like all choir specials. And both are extremes of different styles that discourage congregational singing. When you have just a bunch of soloists up there, whether it be traditional or contemporary, there's nothing wrong with an occasional solo, but if that's all you're doing is concert like worship experiences, whether traditional or contemporary, you're off base. And so choirs can be just as guilty as band led experiences with this. This doesn't really have anything to do with style because you can get this wrong with either style.
Exactly. And speaking of choirs, going back to this consultant looking at the service, he said that there was a choir problem. And then he realized there wasn't a choir. There's just too many people on the stage during the contemporary service all trying to sing lead.
Yeah, when you give a bunch of people all the microphones, unless they're very skilled and you have somebody who can mix well, um, that's hard. When you got 8 or 9 or 10 microphones going, uh, blending all of that well and mixing all of that well is hard. And it can, when it comes through the speakers, if you don't have a good sound system, it can be very muddied. So too many voices from the stage. Again, you want to have a lot of people involved, and you may have a song where you want to do that, but when it's all the time every week, it can be a very muddied experience. Particularly if you have bad hearing like me, where I already have a hard enough time figuring out when things are louder, what's actually being said. You just have to watch that. You just have to watch that. And you also have to be cognizant of people who are hard of hearing. And if you have a lot of people coming up to you saying, "Hey, I just couldn't quite catch what was going on," it may be that you just got too many voices going on.
Yep. And those too many voices are disconcerting, as you said, no matter what type of worship service you supposedly have. Sometimes the instrumentalists need coaching. Go back to this particular consultation. He said the beat was off from the moment the service started. It started with the beat, but it was off from the very beginning, and it stayed off the whole time. And he just kept writing beats off, frustrating beats off, and it's of course somebody playing the drums, and it was just not done well. One instrumentalist not doing things well messes up every single thing. And that was the case here. Sonny and Cher in their 60 song would say, and the beat goes on. Well, in this particular time, the beat should not have gone on because it was offbeat.
So I will never, and I'm going to have to be very careful with this one. I'm going to pick on another trombone player. By the
Oh,
way,
wow.
I played the trumpet. I did not play it very well, and I did not play it very long. So for those of you who are brass experts and very good at what you do, I'm impressed, because I do enjoy, uh, hearing all sorts of different kinds of instruments. But I'm going to pick on another trombone player. So I was at a particular church worshiping. The distance between the front row, the front pew, and the orchestra, it had an orchestra, was minimal. And for some reason, and I guess it's just because trombones need more room, they were kind of out front. Well, when you play and you have a long part, there's spit that kind of gets pooled in the instrument, and
Mm,
you have to push that little lever and blow to get the spit out.
mm,
Well, they had not coached their people well, because this particular trombone player decided, wow, it's time
clear the spit.
to clear the spit out of my instrument. And it's like that whole front, it's like you were at a Gallagher show. If you remember the comedian who used to smash, you know, different
No,
kinds of fruits on stage and all of that.
no.
That's kind of what everyone on the front row experienced with that spit
Oh,
going everywhere. I still have memories of that, and I still chuckle when I think about it, because it was a glorious experience of spit being spewed all over the front row from that
well,
trombone player.
I remember you playing the trumpet. It wasn't a long season, but I do remember it. One of your other two brothers played an instrument. Do you know who and what?
So Art played the French horn,
He did.
and
He
I
did.
don't. Jess, did he
Just,
quit with the recorder? I have no idea. He didn't do very much there, did he?
he played football.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I'm going to play football. I'm going to go hit somebody dead. I remember just some of his sayings as a young football player. Does Jesus mind if I hurt people dead? No, it's good. I'm going to hurt some people today. Anyway, these are some of the things that we found from our worship consultant, who's one of the best. And the church wanted a detail. Why aren't things going well? Not just a subjective guess going in and saying, I didn't like it, but this is why. And he said, I can see why the guest said what he said, the secret guest, because this was really bad. And he gave so many, not just examples, but detail, minute by minute, sometimes by the 15-second mark, that they knew what they needed to do. We'll see what happens from this point on. And Sam, I know you want to thank, as always, one of our best sponsors we have ever had. And not only because they are gracious enough to sponsor Rainer on Leadership, but because they have a ministry that reaches beyond the walls of church. And I'm not going to go into all of your what are things you're going to say, but I absolutely love what they do.
Yeah, Upward Sports. They bridge your church to the community, and they offer an amazing amount of different programs and activities to help you do that. They take sports, which just about everyone loves and is hugely popular, and they use sports as an outreach tool. So they are the world's largest Christian youth sports organization. They come alongside your church. They serve your church, help your church, train your church to reach your community. One of the best ways to reach the community is through sports activities, and they do it better than anyone else. I love how they approach outreach. They do ministry and they help your church do ministry. They truly are the best at what they do. Highly encourage you to go check out Upward Sports. Go to upward.org/church answers. And if you go there, they're going to take you to a page, and they're offering a $500 sports grant to our listeners. I mean, this is so generous that they would do this, not only sponsor the show, but offer this grant. This really enables small churches, mid-sized churches to be able to do this. And this is not just a big church thing. A lot of big churches do this because they have the facilities. But if you've got a parking lot or a field, they can help you do this. And if you're like, man, I don't know if I have the money, go get that startup grant. I mean, they make this affordable. They can get a league going. They can train your people to do outreach in your community. So again, that's upward.org/church answers. Please tell them that we sent you. That'll help us out too. But I'm just glad they are, one, they're just doing kingdom work at Upward, but they're also sponsoring the show, which is a huge honor. And we want to thank all of you for tuning in today on Rainer on Leadership. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for growing the audience. Our subscribers keep going up on YouTube. So give us a thumbs up, interact in the comments. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcasting app, if you don't mind giving us a review there, that would be great too. And just like always, we've got another episode next week. So tune in then, and we'll be talking about stuff like we always do. So check you then.